All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming today. My name is Amber Watson, and I'm the Director of Undergraduate Advising. And joining me today is Danielle Massey. She's the Assistant Director for our Undergraduate Advising Office, and she'll be moderating the question and answer session at the end of this presentation. So a couple of housekeeping items I like to cover before we get started. The first one is all information about the fall semester is available on as far as COVID-19 and in-class versus virtual versus going abroad. All of that is available on the Northeastern News COVID-19 website. We don't have any information outside of what is already public knowledge on that website. And so we won't really be answering questions in those regards for tonight's presentation. The other thing is Danielle and I, like many of you, are working from home today and have been for quite a while. And between the two of us, we have various children, spouses, animals. We have sent them away and we hope that they stay away for the next hour, but we apologize in advance if we are interrupted during this presentation. And then finally, you should see a question and answer box. I believe it should be on the right-hand side of your screen. You're welcome to put questions in at any time. You may or may not see your question show up in the public space, but we will receive all questions and we'll either answer them during this presentation, during the question and answer afterwards, or we'll let you know who better to direct the question to so that you can get the answer that you need. So let's go ahead and get started. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about your student support when you're abroad or in NUin Boston. We're going to talk about your NUin semester and how you're going to get registered for your fall courses. We'll talk about spring registration and your transition to Boston if you aren't already here. And then, of course, we'll have lots of time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. Also, just like my email said, this presentation will be available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, which I gave you the link for tomorrow. So you're welcome to send this to family who couldn't maybe watch it with you or review it, at any point after today. So let's talk about some broad Northeastern University specific, broad information. Here in the College of Science, we have 15 single majors, which are listed in front of you. So many of you who are listening on this call applied to one of these majors. And so if you chose chemistry, you're going to take a lot of chemistry classes, and you're going to graduate with a degree in chemistry. Some of you might have chosen something called a combined major. So a combined major, and so for those of you that don't know what that is, a combined major is one degree. So a student gets one degree, but in two disciplines. So we have some really popular ones like business administration and mathematics, or business administration and psychology, for instance. We also have ones like physics and music, or biology and mathematics. So there's some within the College of Science and some outside. And essentially, the two departments have worked together to kind of narrow down their degrees so that the requirements all fit into the same time frame as any of these single degrees you see in front of you. That's different than a double major, which students often ask us about. If a student wants to do a double major, that would mean that they would complete the entire set of requirements for each major, and they would graduate with two majors. So for instance, if you did chemistry and you wanted to double major in music, that might take you more than 8 semesters, which, by the way, 8 semesters is sort of normal time to degree at Northeastern and in college in general. So, something like chemistry and music as a double major might take you longer than what you would like to take to receive your degree. And so a good number of our students opt for a combined major over a double major, or they'll do a major and a minor. So you might do a major in chemistry and a minor in music, for instance. Certainly if you bring transfer credit in, that picture could look a little bit different, but by and large, students choose not to do a double major because of the time commitment. So here's how it works at Northeastern. Every single student needs 128 to 136 credits to graduate. And the reason why there's a range there is because a biology major needs 136 credits because many of their courses come with a 1-credit lab, versus a psychology major who might only need 128 credits because they don't take any additional 1-credit labs. The Both degrees in that example would graduate in 8 semesters with the same number of 4 credit classes. It's just that those 1 credits make their total credit count higher. So within that 126 to 138, your degree is divided into kind of 3 categories. The first one is your major courses. So if you are a math major, you're going to take a lot of math classes. But most of our majors in the College of Science will also take supplemental courses in other disciplines. So most science majors will take some courses in biology, chemistry, mathematics, and physics. Of course, that's not true for every single one of our majors, but it is pretty common. And we call those sort of support courses. You also, as a student, will take a set of new path courses. So if you've already selected your course registration in the NUin system, you might have seen or looked on the NUin website at the course maps. You may have seen some courses that say that it meets ethical reasoning or interpreting cultures. That's new path. It is a set of requirements that every single student needs to take to graduate at Northeastern. However, each major covers a different subset of those courses. So for instance, a biology major automatically covers creative expression and innovation through their major, whereas a psychology major wouldn't. So the psychology major would choose a creative expression and innovation class, whereas the biology major would choose societies and institutions class instead. So part of what you're going to be doing with your NUin classes is going to cover some of your new path. And then finally, every single student needs a set number of general electives to get to graduation. If you, regardless of your major, if you added your major courses and your new path courses, they would not equal 128 credits or 136. And so what that means is that students have some courses, some free credits that they can take whatever they want to. Many times students will do a minor. So most minors at Northeastern are 4 to 6 credits. And so most of the time students will opt to do a minor as a supplement to their major. But in this category, you certainly could just take classes because they're interesting. You could potentially take language classes. There's a lot of ways to kind of fill your total credits to graduation. I do want to point out that transfer credit, AP, IB, GCE, challenge exams, all of that credit will fulfill any of these categories. There's not restriction as far as which categories can be fulfilled with transfer credit. Speaking of transfer credit, we get a lot of questions. The first question we get is, I don't have AP or IB test scores back yet, so how are you going to make my schedule? And so you'll hopefully have noticed when you were filling out your NUin information that you had the opportunity to check a box whether you thought you might have transfer credit and then enter what kind of transfer credit you might have. When we have if you've gotten an email from us saying that you should schedule an individual appointment with us, that's something we'll talk about in that appointment. And so or that walk-in, I should say. So we'll say to you, okay, you took bio AP, but you don't have your scores yet. How do you think you did? And then based on how you think you did, we'll adjust your schedule. And then once you actually get your credit back, you'll let us know if there needs to be any changes. So if you thought you were going to pass and you didn't, then we'll just adjust your schedule. And same for vice versa. If you really weren't sure and we left your schedule alone, but you end up passing, then we'll move you forward before the fall semester starts. We will take 32 credits of test credit towards your overall degree credits. And so the best way to explain this is, let's pretend that you have 32 credits of AP exams, and then you decide to take the Physics 1 challenge exam and you pass it. That means technically you would have 37 credits of test scores. So what happens is 32 of those credits get applied to your overall graduation limit, but Physics 1 would still fulfill your physics requirement, and you wouldn't be required to take Physics 1 at Northeastern. You would use those 5 credits in some other way. So you would take another major course or a free elective to get to that total 128 to 136. We'll also take 60 credits from a 2-year institution and 80 credits from a 4-year institution. So if you have dual enrollment or you've done some things this summer, that's what will come in from a university or college. And it's really important to note that you need a C or better for those courses to transfer. There are 2 exceptions to that rule. The first exception is If your institution only issued pass-fail grades, then we would take a pass or a satisfactory grade. The other exception is if the institution where you got credit from went to pass-fail either spring or this summer because of COVID-19, we would also take pass or satisfactory grades for those semesters. So that's kind of some information about Northeastern, how it works in general at Northeastern. Let's talk a little bit about your fall semester. So your main academic advisor, your main point of contact is going to be Danielle Massey. I'll leave this slide up for just a second if people want to take a screenshot or write this down. You also should have gotten emails from her already. So this name should be familiar and this email should be familiar, but she will be your main point of contact for the fall semester. You can always use the COS advising email as an alternative if for some reason you don't remember Danielle's name, but either way, you'll be working with Danielle this fall while you're in your NUin program. And so part of this work is going to be fall registration. Everybody at this point should have gotten an email from Danielle that said one of two things. Either it looks like you don't have any transfer credits or elective choices for your major, so your schedule is all set. You don't need to meet with us unless you have a question. So you're all set. Look for more information from the NUin office. The other email said something like, you might have some transfer credits or electives or both, and so we need to have a conversation with you about your fall schedule. So that's what we're going to do in these upcoming walk-ins that I've seen many people sign up for. So hopefully most of you have already chosen your time slot. But in that meeting, Danielle and I will meet with students and we'll talk about the courses you've chosen in your NUin database. We'll talk about your transfer credits and how that affects everything. And we'll just make sure that the choices you made really are in alignment with your curriculum. We'll also, again, review any of those transfer credits and talk about, does it make sense for you to repeat credits? Should you move forward? By the way, usually our advice to most students is that you should take your AP credit and do some other class. But certainly there are exceptions to that rule, and it's a very individualized conversation that you'll have with Danielle or I in the next couple of weeks. And then again, we'll ask you to follow up with us after scores post if there's any changes that need to happen in your schedule. And so that's really all you need to do for the summer. That will get you set and ready for the fall semester and ready to be in your classes. So once you're in your program in the fall, we really want you to take ownership of your academic experience. We encourage you to develop good study habits. College is different than high school. It's less structured as far as time. Typically, people are not necessarily reminding you of due dates, and so we really want you to develop good study habits and utilize your instructor office hours. And this is true whether you're in NUin Boston or whether you're going abroad. Please reach out to Danielle if at any point you're having concerns about your classes and if you think they're not going well. It's definitely important to maintain communication with Danielle along those lines. Use your resources. There are study groups and tutoring and all kinds of academic resources, again, regardless of whether you're staying in Boston or you're going to one of the other two sites. But there's a lot of, even if you're staying home and doing NUFlex, there's resources as far as tutoring and other study skills stuff. And then I cannot stress this enough. You might have gotten an email from us to your personal email about the NUin, about this webinar and about your appointment, but from now on, we will be emailing only your Northeastern email. So it's really important that if you haven't claimed it already, you claim it and that you get in the practice of checking it, because that's where all our information is going to go to you from this point forward. We also have a great resource that everyone will be signed up for in the fall, and it's our NUin Ambassador program. So every single NUin student will have a ambassador assigned to them to really get to know, to ask questions about fall, spring classes, to ask questions about co-op, anything that you need to know. They're also really going to be there to support you through your fall semester. And it's almost all former NUin students. So it's really great to be connected to an upper class student who's been where you've been and has done what you've done. And they'll be contacting you in the fall semester. And then the idea is that you will then be meeting with those people in person in the spring. It's certainly up to you whether you email them back, but they will reach out to you in September just to kind of welcome you, see if you have any questions, see how you're doing. So we really encourage you to get connected with that person because it's a great way to get to know upper class people in your major. Spring registration. I know it seems very odd for me to be talking about spring right now, but it's really important that you at least, that this process sounds familiar to you. In the middle of October, October 22nd to November 2nd, you will be getting an email from Danielle, which fully outlines how spring registration is going to work from you. It again will go straight to your Husky email. But that is the time in which we will start talking about spring registration. The schedule will come out around that same time, so you'll be able to see the schedule of classes that are available for the spring. And some students will be pre-seeded into courses. And what that means is we generically will put all bio majors in, just for an example, Organic 2, Calculus for biology majors, and English writing, just as an example. We will then teach you how to adjust that based on your own courses that you're in the fall and the transfer courses you bring in. So you'll see some courses that may not make sense for you individually. Just know that it happens across the board and that you will have a chance to change them when your registration opens. You'll register yourself for spring classes, but you'll be guided in that process. We'll teach you how to register. We'll make sure that you're clear on what kinds of courses you need to register. We'll make sure you know if you need to make changes to your pre-seeded schedule. But then you'll be able to pick your own times and days and faculty members, in the fall for the spring. And then our goal is that every student is fully finished registering by December 20th. And then we will do one last look at your schedule to make sure that you are good to go, that it meets all of your curriculum requirements before we have winter break. A couple of things to remember. Please ignore your schedule. Again, the pre-seed may not be applicable to you specifically because maybe you came in with English writing. But it doesn't mean that you have to take English writing. It just means that we mass register all students based on their major, and you'll have an opportunity to change it when your registration opens. It's also really important if you're thinking about changing your major, whether that's right now or sometime in the fall semester, that you communicate with Danielle as quickly as possible. If you're trying to change your major right now, you can submit it in your your admissions portal, and then Danielle will get that information. And if you're staying within the College of Science, it's a really simple process. When you talk to us during your walk-in meeting, we'll adjust your schedule based on the new major that you choose, and your major will be processed, you'll go about your day. If you're going to switch to a new college for your major change, there will be a delay, and you will then hear back from the new college regarding fall registration and how to get how to make sure that you're all set for your new major. And then finally, when you get here, well, some of you will get here soon, but when you start in the spring with us, you will be assigned a permanent academic advisor. So Danielle helps you all through the fall semester, but once you start in the spring, you will have an academic advisor who's based on your major. And that person will work from you from that time all the way through to the end of graduation. And they really help you navigate your curriculum. They can help you do planning. So that's when you'll start to think about how many co-ops would you want to do? Do you want another study abroad experience? How long will it take you to graduate? All of those questions and those kinds of planning appointments will happen in the spring semester for you. And it'll be guided with and by your academic advisor. You'll also have a co-op advisor. That person will help you all the way from before you go on your very first co-op until you're finished with your very last co-op. So you're really supported in that process, and you'll really get to know someone along your job search process. And then finally, this is pretty unique to the College of Science, but you'll also have a faculty advisor. These are faculty members who teach in your department where your major is housed. And they really are curriculum content experts. So they're great people to talk about how to choose electives based on career goals, right? So if you want to be a green chemist, then you could speak to the chemistry faculty advisor about which chem electives might be best for you. They're also really great to talk about graduate school applications and sort of preparation for graduate programs. And then finally, if you really get to know these faculty members, then they're likely to be able to provide you a letter of recommendation. I apologize, it's my dog barking. Then they're likely to be able to provide you a letter of recommendation for when you're applying for graduate programs or applying for jobs or that kind of thing. So you'll really be supported in a variety of ways at Northeastern. It starts with Danielle, and then it ends with a pretty strong team of advising. With that, that is all the information I had for you. I didn't want to overload you, but I did want you to have the basics. So you're welcome to type in your questions. I'm not sure if there's any there now. Oh my gosh, I have no idea what just happened there. This is our first one. Can you tell? I apologize profusely. Please ask your questions.
One question that we often get about minors is whether or not you can minor in a discipline that's not housed in the College of Science.
Ooh, good question. Yes. In fact, it's most common for students to minor in something other than a science. Almost every single one of our degree programs carries a minor with it, so it is really common for students to do a minor. The other question around that same lines that sometimes students ask is, when can I declare a minor? You won't declare a minor until the spring semester, but certainly if you already know you want to minor in something, we could talk about how, if there's a class, an NUin course that could potentially fill a minor requirement, so you kind of get started on your minor even if you can't declare it yet.
We have a question that just came in. Are there any advisors for combined majors or different requirements?
Sure. So I'm not sure the second part of that question, what that means. So you're welcome to sort of resubmit a question to clarify that piece. But for the combined majors, you will be, like, let's say that you're a physics and music major and you're housed in the College of Science. So you'll have a permanent physics advisor starting in the spring. And then you also will be able to see the music advisor in CAMD, as well. So you technically kind of have two advisors, although you always have a primary advisor in the College of Science. If the question was kind of referring to, like, well, how can I ask my advisor about minors, or if I'm not sure about majors, whoever your advisor ends up being, either Danielle in the fall or whoever you're assigned to in the spring, can certainly talk to you about other majors that exist at Northeastern, and definitely can help you figure out the minor requirements. Your primary advisor is kind of your first stop for what you need, and then we let you know if maybe there's some information that you need to get from another college and another advisor.
Another question about combined majors. If I am not currently a combined major, when and how do I request to change my major into a combined major?
If you're not in a combined major and you already right this minute know you want to be in a combined major, you should just go to your admissions portal and submit the change. Like I said, if it's within the College of Science, it's a really quick and easy change. We'll make sure your schedule makes sense for your combined major. If you're combining something that is having you leave the College of Science, then you'll hear from that new college generally within 2 weeks after you submit. You don't have to declare now. I think I just saw one come in that said something along the lines of, like, how long do I have to declare? Technically, you can change your major all the way until you graduate. Obviously, we really prefer you not to do that, but it is not something that you have to make your mind up about today and never be able to change again. I would say it's most common for students to change their major in the first 4 semesters that they're here, because that leaves you the most amount of time to catch up if you need to, depending on what you choose. But it's definitely not something you need to make your mind up about right now.
Another question that we often get is about if I participate in NUin, will it make my time at Northeastern longer?
I'm very sorry. I don't actually know if you can hear the barking, but I apologize if you can. Can you repeat the question?
If you participate in the NUin semester, does it increase your time at Northeastern?
Oh, good question. Generally speaking, no. The curriculum, the NUin curriculum is really designed to be, to have the same major courses that you would be taking on campus. So typically, no.
Grade question came in. Are grades C and above from college credit incorporated into our GPA, or is the credit the only thing that matters?
That is a fantastic question. All transfer credits do not contribute to your GPA. And so you need a C or better to get the credit in, but you won't actually get any grades. So for NUin students, your first GPA will be at the end of the spring semester. However, that's not to say your grades don't count. This is a really important distinction. If you are applying to graduate school or a health profession, they will request transcripts from every place that you have taken a college level course, and then they will calculate their own GPA. So your Northeastern GPA won't include transfer credits, but any kind of graduate application, that GPA will include your transfer credits. That's a good question.
A lot of our students in the College of Science are pre-med. Could you speak to the pre-health advising?
Sure. Yep. We have a really robust pre-health office. They work with students who want to be MDs, DOs, physician's assistants, dentists, podiatrists, optometrists, veterinarians. And they work with students from their first semester all the way until they are done applying and have gotten into a program, including students who take like a gap year or two and are applying as Northeastern alumni. And so, you know, at the beginning of your time here at Northeastern, you might just attend 1 or 2 workshops that kind of talk about the process or talk about things you should be thinking about. And then as you get closer to applying, they have a lot more support and a lot more workshops and a lot more guidance that goes out. And then, of course, you can meet with a pre-health advisor once per semester at any point once you start in the fall.
And we had a follow-up question to that. How does the NUin program fit into people who are looking into the pre-professional or pre-med?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly clear what that's asking, but I'll answer how I think it's asking, and you're welcome to post again if I don't answer the question. We have lots of students who have completed the NUin program and who go on to go to medical school, dental school, etc. Like I said, your transcript will post separately to the AMCAS, which is for med school what you apply to, or CASPA for PA. There's a whole bunch of different application processes, but essentially, you know, you're still competitive having done an NUin program. In fact, it kind of makes you an interesting applicant if you've having a broad experience, for instance. And I know that this semester obviously is going to be slightly different in that regard, but yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the question's answering, other than to say that it works fine and it doesn't really hamper your chances at those kinds of programs. So hopefully that answered the question.
Does NUin accept transfer credits from any college course, or is it restricted to dependent on major?
That's a good question. We will, okay, so the first part of the answer is it's not dependent on major. It's not like if you're a chemistry major, you can or can't, you know, transfer certain courses in. The transfer courses are all dependent on it having been taken at an institution which is regionally accredited. So we don't take credit for like for-profit institutions that aren't regionally accredited, for example. B, the course needs to be non-remedial level. So, and then C, it needs to closely match or be at the level of a course that we would take here. So we have a transfer database. If you Google transfer database Northeastern, it should be the very first link that pops up. You can see the whole list of colleges and universities where students have already transferred credits from. And you can like, so let's say that you took some classes at Rutgers. You can choose Rutgers, and then you can see all the classes that have already been evaluated. And then if you took a class that isn't on the list from Rutgers, Danielle will work with you to submit your syllabus so that we will then get it evaluated by the faculty member. So essentially, we send the syllabus to the faculty member, and then they determine what level or what course it matches at Northeastern.
We had the clarifying question about the pre-med requirements. Are any of the pre-med requirements started during the course of the NUin fall semester? So do students get to start on their pre-med requirements during the NUin semester?
Yes. So, well, okay, assuming that your major has pre-med requirements, right? So if you're a math major but need to take bio and psych and chemistry, maybe you will only do some of those. But if you're a pre-med major, or not major, but if you want to go into pre-med and you're a biology major, for instance, then yes, absolutely, because you'll be in chemistry, you'll be in biology. If you're a BNS major, you'll also be in psychology, which is another prereq. So certainly you'll start your prereqs assuming that your major aligns with pre-health prereqs. It's not impossible. We have students who are psychology majors and math majors and linguistics majors who all go on to be pre-health. They'll just have to they have to arrange their courses slightly different. And so you may not take like as many prereqs in the fall as you would if you were a biology major, but you certainly would still be able to start on some of those prereqs.
We had a question about, is it still possible to apply for a combined BS-MS program in psychology?
So all of our BS-MS degrees, you wouldn't actually apply to them until your junior, your third or fourth, end of your second to your third year. So it's not something you apply to now or even need to make a decision about now. As of right this minute, what we have in psychology is a BS in psychology and an MS in, Danielle, help me out because I always get these initials wrong, ABA, Advanced Behavioral Analysis. Is that what it is?
Close, Applied Behavior Analysis.
That. So we have that one. And also coming live, although it has not actually started yet, is supposed to be a BS MS in psychology and school counseling. But again, that is not fully officially on the books yet. But either way, you wouldn't apply to those as a first year student. So you have plenty of time to kind of figure it out. And we don't have a BS-MS in just psychology. Right this minute, all of our +1 degrees, which is what you're referring to, are applied degrees. So we have biotechnology, bioinformatics, applied mathematics, the ABA, school counseling. So they're very much applied master's degrees.
Can students choose whether your courses are pass-fail?
No. Well, mostly no. So at Northeastern, the only way you can do pass-fail is if a course does not count for your major, your minor, new or any new path courses. And so that really limits the list down. I also believe and this is something that you have to petition with the faculty. And so I don't believe this is an option for your NUin semester either way, but even once you move on to the rest of your time at Northeastern, you still would have a very limited window of classes that would qualify to do pass-fail. And again, it would still have to be approved by the faculty.
Question, how many classes will we be taking this semester? And how many of those are NUin specific?
So I'm not sure if this is, the second part of that question seems like maybe they're asking because they're coming to NUin Boston, but so I'm going to answer with that vein, but again, certainly feel free to write back and clarify. But all of your courses, whether you're in Boston or you're going to London or Dublin, are going to be NUin classes. And so you're going in a cohort of classes. You should have by now hopefully been able to look at the course maps for each of your locations, but that gives you an idea. Each country, because of the way that the credit count varies, you will be taking 4 to 5 classes. Well, really 4 plus a 1 credit, plus maybe an additional other course, depending on which country you're in. So to answer that question best, you should look at the course maps for the country that you're going to, because it's a slightly different answer between Dublin and London and Boston. But the main answer is that all of your courses are NUin courses, even if you're doing NUin Boston.
And then we have a question, is it better to take general electives for the first semester or electives that will fulfill major requirements?
Ooh, good question. So we have kind of a rule of thumb that you don't want to take more than 3 science classes in the semester. There are certainly exceptions to that, behavioral neuroscience, for instance, because they do psychology, math, chemistry, and bio. That obviously is 4 science classes, but by and large, we say 4 science classes and 1 non-science class. We are going to probably urge you to have your 4th class be a new path class that you haven't yet met, or that you wouldn't have met through transfer credits. That certainly doesn't mean you have to. If there's a really fascinating course that you want to take that's a general elective, you absolutely can do that. But we tend to suggest that you try to do new path and major courses during your NUin semester.
And I have a question again about the GPA from NUin. Is our first semester truly pass-fail, or do we receive letter grades that just don't contribute to our GPA?
Great question. It is the latter. So you will get an official transcript with letter grades from the institution where you take your classes, including if you're here in Boston. But those grades, when you see them on your Northeastern undergraduate day transcript, those will all have T's on them and just show the credits that they grant, not the grades. Yep, that's a good question. So it's not pass fail. So you can literally still earn, an A, a B, a C, etc. And like I said, if you're applying for health professions, graduate programs, etc., those grades still really count. So it's still really important that you try to do well. Not that you wouldn't, but that those grades will still count.
Could you speak a little bit more about the NUin Ambassador program? I know I've always had students ask me questions about that one.
Sure. So these are volunteer students. Like I said, most of them are former NUin students, although we have a handful of students who haven't done the NUin program. And they're really here to be a connection between you and other students. So they will reach out at very specific times in the semester, kind of based on what's going on. So when you're just settling into your new site, whether it's Boston or abroad, they'll kind of reach out and ask you how it's going, see if you have any concerns, questions, that kind of thing. I know a lot of students will use them when they're looking at registration and kind of thinking about, if they have electives to choose, for instance, they might ask the ambassador for some suggestions or maybe see what kind of courses they've taken. So it's really an individual relationship, and it's up to the ambassador and the NUin student what that looks like. So I know that some ambassadors talk really regularly with their NUin students, like once a week they'll kind of catch up. And via Zoom or whatever. And then I know some NUin students and ambassadors who maybe talk 3 times a semester, and that's good enough for both of them. And so it's really kind of individual, based on each sort of pairing.
I have a question about the culture class with NUin. Is it better to take a culture class that covers more new path requirements?
Good question. I don't love the word better, because I think you should learn what you want to learn. Putting that aside, yes. Ideally, if if what you're taking in NUin is fulfilling major and new path requirements, that just gives you more choice for the rest of your time here at Northeastern. It just kind of opens up some space and choice later. But again, if there's a class, a culture class that you think would be really interesting, and then the one that carries the new path is one that you really don't think would be interesting, please choose the interesting one. But if they're both equally interesting, then definitely choose the new path one. That's a good question. We still have some more time too, so we can just kind of hang out. As I wish we had the like little dot buttons that showed us that someone was typing.
That would be helpful.
Right?
I can share that last year, Amber and I were able to go to some of the NUin sites, which was a really great experience for all of us, and to see the students that were really able to bond with each other and their NUin cohorts really made for a good transition to the day school in the spring semester. They were able to support each other and be around. It created some really great bonds that way. And also had some really unique experiences to share with the rest of their class during this time.
Yeah, I got to go to Dublin and then the year before London, and I loved both cities. So much fun stuff. And I obviously love Boston because I chose to move here. So I think all three sites this year are actually outstanding. So while we're waiting for questions, I'll put another plug. Please sign up for one of the appointment time slots if you haven't done so already, and you need to. Certainly if you have no electives and no transfer credits and this information was what you needed, then you don't need to sign up for a slot. But if you have electives or transfer credits coming in, please sign up for a slot if you haven't already, just so we can have a conversation and finalize your scores. We're also kind of hoping, we purposely didn't start them till next week, hoping that some of the AP and IB stuff would be back by then. Again, if it's not, it's no big deal. We'll adjust your schedule if we need to, but we might have some in and be able to have sort of a more final conversation when we start meeting with you all. We'll wait a few more minutes, and then if there's no questions, we'll wrap up, but we certainly have plenty of time to wait.
A question came in about the walk-in appointments. Just how do they work?
That is a fantastic question that I should probably just cover in the presentation. So thank you for asking. So the walk-in appointments, you already signed up for a slot on my Calendly, and they're an hour long, and Danielle and I will both be there. So the day of the appointment, I will send you, or Danielle will send you, someone will send you a link to a Zoom room. You'll log into the Zoom room, and then you'll put your name on a Google list, which will give you the link. There's nothing you need to do about it now. And we'll start to pull students into breakout rooms in the order that they log in. Every student who signed up for that time slot will be seen. So there's no reason, you don't have to necessarily log in right at, 2 p.m. You certainly could log in closer to 2:30 if you wanted to, it's really up to you. But essentially, if you've gotten one of the time slots in Calendly, then we will see you during that time. So you'll log in, and our administrative assistant will help you get signed in. And then he'll put you in either Danielle or I's room, which will be just us and the student. So you won't be asking your questions or talking, in front of other people. We'll have our videos on likely, but you certainly are welcome to do a video or not. It's up to you. You can just do a voice. And for Zoom, you can either download the client or do it online, and they might even give you a phone number to call into. But we'll basically then talk about your schedule, make sure it's finalized, make sure we know what choices you've made, and answer kind of any lingering questions. But the primary goal of that walk-in is to get you squared away schedule-wise for the fall. So hopefully that explained and answered how walk-ins work.
I could ask another question that I typically get is about co-ops, and how do I know when I should go on one or when should I schedule them, and just how does that process of knowing classes versus co-ops?
Yep, that's a good question. So you'll learn a lot more about the co-op process in your spring orientation, but essentially the earliest that students can go on co-op is their spring of their sophomore or second year. And then the latest students tend to go on their first co-op is the fall of their junior or third year. And when I say fall, I really mean summer 2 and fall. One co-op cycle is spring and summer 1. So it goes from January to July to the end of June. And then one goes from the beginning of July to December. Students are assigned a co-op pattern so in the spring, you'll get an email from me that lists your co-op pattern. There is a mechanism to change if you get one that you would have preferred the other. But we really have a conversation. You'll have a conversation with your advisor before you ask for a change. More often than not, students will just immediately think that they want to change. And then after having a planning conversation with their advisor, they realize that the pattern they're on actually does make sense for them. Although certainly if it doesn't, there's a mechanism to change. But most students stick with whichever one they were assigned, either fall or spring.
And just a follow-up question about co-ops, are they mainly in Boston or other locations?
Yeah, so we have co-ops all over the world. And in fact, at last count, we had co-ops on all continents. So we have a base in Antarctica that one of our environmental science faculty takes students to for co-op. So we really literally send students everywhere. We obviously have a huge number of co-ops in Boston because being in the sciences in Boston is pretty perfectly placed, but students can pretty much go anywhere for co-op.
And I had a clarifying question. I should not feel obligated to take electives that are within my new path major if I don't want to.
Correct. So every student, the goal, here's how it works. The goal is that you graduate in 8 semesters, right? That's normal time to degree. That would be normal time if you went to Boston University or if you went to Northeastern. With co-op, obviously those 8 semesters look different because you have co-op in between, but you still only should be in classes 8 semesters. So we find that if you know right this second what you want to do and what you want to minor in, and there's classes that make sense for that in NUin, then pick to your heart's content, you're golden. If you're kind of in a position where you're not sure what you might minor in, maybe you're going to declare a combined major at some point, etc., then we suggest that you do new path and major courses because you need to have time later on to be flexible to still graduate in those 8 semesters. And so, but that being said, you can literally take any elective courses that you want to. And if you're in a position right now where you are thinking that you don't want to take any major courses, then we're going to have a conversation with you about whether it makes sense for you to be in the Explore program, because there is the expectation that you move forward in your curriculum, but the Explore program lets you kind of pick from a variety of classes in a more flexible way. But certainly you do not have to do a new path as your elective at all. It's just a good suggestion, especially if you're not sure what else you want to do while you're here.
A question about the walk-ins. So will we be getting our final schedules at the walk-in bearing any AP changes? And then there's a couple others that I'm going to lump together with this scheduled question. When do we find out about our class times, and will we be able to choose the timings of our classes?
That's a good question. So the answer is no to all of the above. When we do the walk-ins, what we're really doing is confirming your choices. So we want to make sure that if you chose bio, but you have bio AP, that you know what that means, for instance, or that your elective, that we have options for electives. And then the NUin office will do all the scheduling. So Danielle and I don't do any of your actual scheduling. We have a conversation with you about your choices, and then NUin handles all the scheduling. And then depending whether you're in Boston or whether you're in one of the other countries, at some point they then send you your actual schedule. But it's not a, you won't be able to pick times, days, that kind of thing. What we're really doing is talking about course choices rather than course sections.
And speaking of schedule, what does the NUin seminar class we are required to take cover?
That is a really good question that I think is better asked of NUin. I know that you should be getting some orientation information for NUin soon if you haven't already. I think it's, you know, you study sort of global topics and some just basic intro to college kind of topics, but I actually don't know the answers fully to that question. So please ask NUin, unless Danielle, you have more information than me, which is totally possible.
Well, typically the NUin seminar is a place for the students to meet with their site staff and talk about how the semester is going. They do a lot of time management stuff, so things like the transition to college type course work, but it's also cultural, so transitioning to your site, transitioning to your the place that you're going, that's typically covered in that seminar class. I have a question about co-ops again. Can students go on 2 consecutive co-ops?
So only in very, very, very rare circumstances. So it requires a provost petition. It has to be really in extreme circumstance. Because students are in out of classes for 6 months, the Department of Education requires students to return to classes after a co-op as to be able to consider students full-time students while they're on co-op. So it is extremely rare for a student to do a back-to-back co-op because essentially what that would mean is that you were considered a full-time student for you know, visa status, for student loan status, for Northeastern status, but without having been in classes for an entire year.
I have another question. For international students, when in regards to NU Start, will class times cater to the different time zones, or will our class choice be limited?
So we only have a little bit of information on NU Start, but there is a pretty significant frequently asked questions page on the admissions website. NU Start is designed to be asynchronous, which means that students can log on and do it at their own time. And so as far as the limit, the courses that are a part of the NU Start program are also listed on that website. There are some different choices than there is for the general NUin curriculum. And I don't have really at this time any more information to share. We're still kind of waiting on some details for that, which I know is not a great answer, but as we learn more, we will certainly work with students who are opting to do NU Start. But for now, I would suggest the admissions website is the best way for you to get some basic stuff answered.
Is the NUin seminar class intensive, like a general science class, or is it easier?
Well, I would be hesitant to call any class easy. I would say that the work expectation is much less because it's only a 1-credit course. If you're talking about the 4-credit culture course, that's the same level as every other 4-credit course. And it depends what you find easy, right? So some students really like writing and the culture courses are sort of easy for them, whereas other students are better at math or chemistry, et cetera. So if you're talking about the 4-credit course, I would anticipate the work level to be the same for any other course. If you're talking about the 1-credit NUin global course, then it's certainly going to have a much lower time commitment than the rest of your classes. We probably have time for maybe 2 more questions in case there's any last minute questions people are really wanting to ask.
I'm getting a couple questions in here that I'm just going to generally answer. Anything that has to do with travel or housing or site-specific information or things like that nature can be directed to the NUin office. Their email address is really easy. It's just nuin@northeastern.edu. I'm going to share that with those that had just asked the questions, but I wanted to make a statement that if you have questions in that regard, that those would be best for the NUin office.
Yeah, so I'll wait for 1 more minute just to see if there's any more academic questions. We could probably take 1 or 2 more academic questions and then we'll wrap up. Any final academic questions, Danielle?
I just have one. Just came in. Are the professors teaching NUin Boston classes the same as those teaching regular Northeastern classes?
So that's a great question that I don't have a solid answer to. Some of our classes will be taught by professors who are also teaching other, Northeastern fall classes. I believe that we are also currently hiring some adjunct professors for the NUin classes. Obviously, some of this came together, because of the circumstances, and so most of our faculty had already been assigned teaching loads before we knew that NUin Boston would be a thing. So I think if I had my best guess, it would be a mix of faculty who are teaching other classes on campus and adjunct instructors who are just teaching for the NUin program. All right, I think that about wraps it up tonight. Again, I'm not even positive if you've heard my dog, but she has barked multiple times. So if you have, I apologize profusely. Hopefully tonight was really helpful. I do want to emphasize that all questions, just like Danielle said, we really are here to guide your academic journey and the academic process. But anything to do with housing or travel or a scheduled timing, that kind of thing, that's all through the NUin office. And so we encourage you to reach out to them with those questions that we weren't able to answer on, on our own tonight, but do we have any last minute? I see two in the, I'm going to answer the last two, and then these are the last ones I can answer. Do graduate programs evaluate our NUin letter grades separately from our GPA? Most graduate programs combine all of your grades from every course of every place you've taken into one new single GPA. So the answer is they almost, like if you have a 4.0 here, but you had a 3.9 in NUin, then your GPA was likely to be, I don't know, 3.997 or something for graduate school purposes. And then you can rewatch the presentation. The YouTube link should have been is in the confirmation email that I sent to you to get to today's presentation. I will upload it. It won't be up there tonight. I'll upload it tomorrow. I have to edit out that awkward 2 minutes of silence while we waited for people to log in, but it will be available on YouTube for you tomorrow. And you can click on the YouTube link that is in the email that had this link in it. So hopefully that got everything that we could for tonight. So thank you so much for joining us. We really hope it was helpful, and we're looking forward to meeting with you all in the next couple of weeks for your walk-ins. So everybody have a great night. Thank you.